Hi, this is Serene Poetry Analysis, and today I'm looking at John Keats' famous poem, Chapman's Homer. This is a Petrarchan sonnet. It's divided into two stanzas, an octave and a sestet. In the octave, the speaker describes how he has imaginatively traveled to the world of ancient Greece, but he never fully experienced that world until he read a certain translation of Homer by the English poet George Chapman. And then in the sestet, he tells us what that experience was like. It was a transformative experience, and he describes that through analogy. Now, in the octave, John Keats relies heavily on the poetic device of inversion, syntactical inversion. And for traditional poetry, poets will use inversion or inversions primarily for metrical reasons and rhyming reasons, and also to place certain emphasis on words at the end of a line. Now, as I mentioned, John Keats relies on it in some ways too much, but I think that this is done intentionally, because inversion creates a sense of artificiality. When you read lines that are inverted, it has a feeling of foreignness. And I think that this is mimetic of the feelings described in the poem by the speaker. The speaker feels in some ways constricted, constrained, when reading these inferior translations of Homer, and is unable to truly experience this world. The world feels foreign to him. It feels artificial. He feels constricted. And I believe that this is done intentionally through the use, that this feeling is mimetically rendered through the use of inversion, where you feel that way. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. In standard syntax, it would be, I have seen many goodly states. In line 3, standard syntax would be, I have been round many western islands, which hold bards in fealty to Apollo. So he's placing the verbs at the end of the lines. Hold, I have been, seen. Line 5, told. So here he's creating a sense of artificiality, and as I mentioned, you feel, in some ways, that feeling of foreignness. However, this all changes in the sestet. Then felt I like a watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. The syntax becomes more traditional. It opens up, and thus, so does our speaker. So as I mentioned, the syntax of the poem is mimetic of the thematic development. Now, also in the sestet, Keats relies on analogy. He describes how the speaker feels like a discoverer, an astronomer who discovers a new planet, and a conquistador, a maritime explorer who discovers something for the first time, and here it's the Pacific. Now, Cortez did not discover the Pacific, but it was actually Balboa, a minor error, but the feeling is the same, that sense of discovery. Our speaker has discovered something for the first time. He's discovered a new world. And thus, he is describing it through these analogies in order to show a sense of epiphany or complete transformation. So, the poem, divided into the two stanzas, the octave and the sestet, is set up perfectly in the sense that, as I mentioned, we have an idea developed in the octave that is further developed in the sestet. And we have the transformative experience developed and shown through analogy, which really helps develop a certain theme in the poem. In that, individuals can have transformative experiences in art, can be transported back to a different time period, and to experience it fully only if two things are present. Those two things are the imaginative qualities and powers of the reader, in this case the speaker, who has traveled to these places in the past but never truly experienced them until he read a translation of superior quality. So that's the second element that's necessary, is that you need to have high art. You need to have art of a high quality that will allow someone who is open to discovery, who is looking for something new to truly experience that world. So you need imagination coupled with high art, or art of a high aesthetic quality, in order to create a transformative experience. So we have a sense of discovery in the poem, but you only discover something if you're looking for it. And our speaker was looking for this world. He wanted to truly experience it. He couldn't experience it through these inferior translations. He felt constricted, restrained, and that's developed in the octave, as I mentioned, especially through the use of inversion. But when he finally read a certain translation where he experienced this world, he felt a sense of liberation. And mimetically, that is drawn through traditional syntax, or more traditional syntax in the sestet, where the inversions, in some ways the shackles of inversion, are thrown aside, and that the speaker can fully experience this. And Keats shows that through analogy, through explorers who have discovered something for the first time. But as I mentioned, they have to be looking for it. So our speaker, through this experience, now has seen the world of Homer in its full glory for the first time, and thus he has been transformed by it. And this transformation is a discovery, and it's something that in some ways has changed him for the better. And Keats has brought this about through the use of analogy, and as I mentioned, through the use of inversion.